We are here today to discuss the fascinating work, Ananda, an exploration of cannabis in India, with its author, Mr. Karan Madhok, a renowned writer, journalist, and editor, known for his writing on basketball and Indian culture. He is the founder of the Hoopistani blog, which focuses on Indian basketball, and co-founded the Chakkar, an Indian arts and culture website, which recently frontlined the inaugural Landor Literature and Arts Festival. He authored a novel, A Beautiful Decay, in 2022. His journalism has appeared in Frontline, Scroll, and Slam magazine, among others. His debut non-fiction work, Ananda, an exploration of cannabis in India, is the recipient of the WOW Book Award 2025 for English non-fiction. To guide this crucial conversation, we have an expert voice. It is my honor to introduce our moderator for today, Ms. Yauvanika Chopra. Ms. Chopra is a researcher of Indian literature and translation, formerly Associate Director at the New India Foundation. She has also worked with Speaking Tiger Books as an editor. She holds an MA from King's College London, focusing on intertextual representations of Indian women in contemporary literature. Her insight and expertise make her the ideal person to navigate the session. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Yauvanika Chopra to the dais with a huge round of applause.
Hi, thank you so much, Ms. Priyanka Dani, for that wonderful introduction, with which Karan has told me that now everything is on me because he's one, so now he has to do nothing else. Not true. But we are going to aim to close our session slightly early, and we welcome audience questions. So, Mahika, if you could let us know 20 minutes before the session is over so we can open up. Thank you. Karan, thank you so much for being here today. We're so excited to be in conversation with you. The first question that I wanted to ask is just to situate the geography and history of the plant that you've written this book about. So why don't you introduce us to cannabis, marijuana, hemp, all of these things as a plant history first?
Thank you, Yauvanika. Thank you for the value words for having me, for awarding this book, which felt really special. I think after all these years of work, you see that it was worth something. And just like a cannabis plant, you plant the seed and it becomes something fruitful, hopefully. So I'm glad that the seed became into something that was worth it. To introduce I don't think the plant needs much introduction. I think almost everyone is somewhat familiar with these phrases: ganja, charas, cannabis, marijuana, and especially in the mountain regions in Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh, so much cannabis grows wild around here. Um, the, so for me, it wasn't it wasn't the introduction to the plant that was a curiosity for me to write this book. It was the confusions around it, because there's so much confusion, because there's so much in the gray space of legalities of cannabis. Um, there's some parts of the same plant that are highly illegal that can get you arrested, and there's some parts of the same plant that are used for clothing, for medicine. You told me you're wearing hemp clothing today, so even she's wearing a dress made out of the same plant that also gets people
My
high.
shirt is made of hemp, and my sari has, well, plants on it. I don't think it's a cannabis plant, but yeah, the hemp is such a booming industry.
So exactly, yeah. So I think for me that was the curiosity, that what exactly is this holistic thing that people are very curious about, but also very scared of. People are getting arrested for it, but people are making a lot of money off of it. And what is its exact relationship to India? Because even though in the cannabis archaeologists have found, that the first strains of the plant were found in the plateau that is now Tibet. A lot of, I would say, majority of the cannabis in the world is now found in India, and it's found naturally in India. The former narcotics director of the country, Mr. Ramesh Bhattacharjee, actually estimated that 2 out of every 3rd district in India has natural cannabis plant growing. So there is no shortage of this thing in our country, and yet there's so much confusion, and yet there's so much taboo about it. So for me, that was the main curiosity, and that was the angle with which I started this book.
So you've touched upon, of course, the fact that the archaeological aspect of it is likely Tibet, China, and then moving to India. But now, if we were to situate your personal geography and history within this, with a focus on something that you've already touched upon, which is the paranoia of consuming bhang, or I mean, you start the book with that. This experience of having bhang as an 18-year-old, I think. And so this paranoia contrasted with the Ananda, which it's supposed to bring in. You dislike this phrase, but in ancient Vedic times, etc. You go on. In India, everybody's always saying we must justify cannabis because, look, we've had it since Vedic times, etc. Which at this point is almost a trite explanation. But how does that, do you want to place both those contrasting poles in your own journey and your own experience geographically and historically with the plant and your search for it?
Yeah, so I started this book with my very first personal experience with bhang. So this is a very personal book, actually, and I think the part of the confusion of what people thought this book would be, it's not that at all. It's not an academic book as much. It's a personal journey it's a travelogue around India, where I'm going to different places. I spend a lot of time in different parts of Uttarakhand in the Chamoli district. I spent a lot of time in the Parvati Valley. I spent time in Manipur and Nagaland, and then in the Red Corridor of India, which is the borderlands of Andhra, Orissa. So I went all over the country, and this is I'm answering the part about the geography that you asked. And almost every single region has some kind of impact with cannabis, whether it's cannabis that is cultivated there naturally or by human efforts, or whether these are places where there's a big black market of cannabis being smuggled in different places, or in places like Bombay and Bangalore, where there are now a lot of hemp startups that are coming up who are making legal use of the same product. So for me, this was my angle in. I wanted to travel to these different places, and this book ended up being a very, very personal journey to these separate places. They were about my experiences. They were about the meetings I had with people, who are dependent on the plant, people who are farmers who are growing the plant, with policemen whose job is to maintain law and order and to make sure that the smuggling doesn't get out of hand. So I think it was that holistic journey then sort of became the expression that is this book.
So lots of different paths to go on from there. But one thing I want to touch upon, just to double down on the paranoia, you mentioned this briefly, is you're looking at people, you've spoken to people in this book who are dependent on marijuana and also on harder drugs, and we'll go into that as well. But a lot of the criminalization of it and whom that affects is not the top players at all. And in some of your conversations, it's very, very insightful because it's always the people who are maybe not even aware of the illegality of what is being done, because to them it's just a traditional plant. So maybe we could touch upon that as paranoia, if you'd like, and then I have a bunch of other questions, so you take it.
That's a good observation. So, especially in the mountain areas. So, one thing very interesting about cannabis in India is that in the north, in the mountains, in Himachal, in Uttarakhand, this plant has just been growing naturally for generations, for millennia. It is being used by farmers, and not for the reasons that people might think. It's been used as the genda rope to tie to tie shoes. It's been used as rope for animal husbandry, to tie cattle. It's been used for, as I mentioned, textiles. Hemp seeds are very healthy for you. They're like a superfood. So in these parts of the country, there was no taboo about it. There was no taboo. There was nothing that was considered, like, this was their thing. It grew in their backyard. Why would it be a problem, you know? Cannabis has been called a gift from the gods in some parts of the country. Whereas if you go to the south, when I spend time in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, there's a huge taboo, and even holding a little bit of raw ganja can get you arrested. I mean, it can get you arrested here too, but in the south, there's just a lot more police force ensuring that they act upon it. In Kerala, for example, famously, there was a strain of cannabis called the Idukki Gold, and it was really, it was illegal, and it was grown illegally for decades. And now they have cleaned up almost all of it there. hundreds and hundreds of acres of illegal cannabis growth. So it was really interesting to me how in certain places there is a taboo and certain places there isn't. Up here in the north, in Himachal and in Uttarakhand, I noticed that people didn't really have an issue speaking about it openly. Um, People didn't really have an issue talking about all of its benefits, as well as all of its all the dark side, because a lot of families have been completely demolished by the smuggling trade of cannabis. People being arrested, fathers being separated from their families because they are sort of stuck as middlemen in the black market. Um, it's not that people don't know what it is. It's just that because it's so common and because it's available everywhere and because it grows everywhere, they don't really, they didn't really see it as a problem until the NDPS Act of 1985 that made cannabis illegal around the country, and it ranked it with the same harder drugs such as cocaine, opium, LSD. It put all of them mostly on the same pedestal. And all of a sudden, farmers for whom this was just a normal plant, it was like neem, it was like anything, they could use it anytime they wish. All of a sudden, this thing was illegal. So I think that's been, even though now we are, what, 4 decades since then, it is still a conflict between the mentality of the people in these parts of the country versus the NDPS law from Delhi, which has told everyone that now this thing is illegal.
So essentially, there's then 3 waves, because there's a traditional use, which includes food, which includes clothing, which includes just lifestyle. It's a plant, like you said, which is like any other. It's a plant like neem. And then you have, obviously, a colonial suspicion, followed by a great deal of American diplomatic pressure. So you do see the waves of government approach as well changing. But one of the things you just talked about is the larger paranoia in the South. And actually in your book, towards the end, you spend a lot of time on Manipur and a fascinating sect that you spent some time with. And over there, there's much more of a cultural comfort, or maybe not comfort, but it's more generalized, perhaps, to see that somebody might be doing, in fact, it's a very contradictory sect because they practice martial arts, but they also essentially are stoners. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about that, please, so that we can contextualize North India, South India, and Northeast India as having very distinct approaches to the use of cannabis?
Yeah, the Manipur part of my trip was probably the most exciting part for me because I met this group and they stressed to me they are not a cult. Anytime someone says that you're probably a cult, they're called Sajjal, or now they go by the United Friendship Association, or UFO. That's their acronym. And you mentioned they worship Pakamba, who is a serpentine deity. Their main goal is to preserve Metis culture and traditions, but they also practice a form of martial arts called Thangta, which is all offense, no defense. And they're stoners at the same time. They like to meet up and get high and discuss their philosophical issues and discuss their martial arts and discuss their culture. And they're given their spaces in Imphal and around Imphal. And it's legal for them to operate within these spaces, within their ashrams, so to say. And it was very interesting for me to spend time with them because they didn't even think of cannabis as a huge problem. The Northeast and Manipur in particular have a much more serious problem with opium use and with opium addiction and heroin addiction, and which has often led to probably the highest density of HIV cases in the country within a particular state. So I think for them, cannabis is almost looked upon as the lighter drug, as the come-down drug. Not even as much as drug, as more of something that avoids the harsher sort of path in life. And people like the members of Sajjal, who come from all walks of life. They could be journalists, they could be lawyers. Some people allege that the chief minister is also a former member of Sajjal, which was just an allegation. This is not something that I am reporting. But my point is that this group is very much accepted and very much part of normal society in Manipur. And it was a fascinating time it was just fascinating to spend time with them.
Actually, you touch upon all the different faiths and how they incorporate marijuana use. I mean, in Hinduism, which is a nebulous thing, and within Hinduism, there's in Shaivite tradition a different approach, and a different approach within Vaishnavites as well, as you illustrate, within Islam and Sufi traditions, within Sikhism, which I learned through your book, and of course also through not cults, like the one that you have covered in Manipur. There's two other broad points that I wanted to touch upon, but we can also spend more time on your travel if you like. I noted in particular Odisha and the Golden Triangle, and Malana, which also you spend a lot of time on. So if possible, we'll circle back to that. But there are the two other things. One is the aspect of addiction. The general stereotype of marijuana as a gateway drug, and the genuine, real ramifications of what marijuana use can sometimes lead to. As you were saying, there's two aspects within that as well. One is of an addiction, which may lead to less of a sense of engagement with the world, or less of an ability to provide for one's family in whatever capacity. And the other aspect being that if you are caught up within it, you may well be arrested and then spend, so there's the aspect of addiction and criminalization, which I wanted to touch upon. And then the follow-up question to that, which if you want to weave into this, is the entrepreneurship aspect. And why I'm thinking about this is because actually both the addiction and the criminalization aspect, if we had a more legal framework, or at least a decriminalized framework, would play out very differently. And Abhi Shekhar Da was just saying कि pandemic के time इतने सारे लोग आ तो गए थे उत्तराखंड में, I think I'm forgetting the number, but he said लाखों लोग आ गए थे उत्तराखंड में, जिसमें से सिर्फ 10,000 को हम रख पाए हैं, because there's very little opportunity here. What do young people do in this state? And is there an actual viable possibility? Industrial hemp, of course, has become legal in Uttarakhand, but as you were pointing out, there's under 0.3% and things like that. So how would entrepreneurship help, or entrepreneurial ambition, with both these twin aspects of addiction and criminalization?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that basically is the crux of the complexity of cannabis in India. The fact that this is something that scientists will say that you cannot get chemically addicted to it, and what they mean by that is that it doesn't affect your system. The human body doesn't need it. The same way it might need if someone is addicted to a harder drug or even alcohol. What can happen is a dependency, which means that you can build a habit, which means that you might not be able to go to sleep without it, if that is something that someone does very often. In India, I spoke to, in Delhi and in the Northeast, I spoke to a lot of heroin addicts, or what they would call brown sugar addicts, especially in the Delhi NCR region. A lot of them started from cannabis. It wasn't that cannabis was a gateway drug to brown sugar, but usually what would happen is that the peddlers, the street dealers, they would offer both the drugs, and since both the drugs are equally illegal, it would almost be a very easy temptation for a user of cannabis to be told that, okay, you've tried this, now try this one. It costs the same almost, and it's not going to get you, and it's going to get you that much more, excuse my French, fucked up, right? So I think because of that, it became related to the issue of addiction in India, and around the world, I would say. But then now there's the entrepreneurial side. Uttarakhand, as we all know, was the first state to be allowed the cultivation of industrial hemp, or hemp for industrial use. And this happened almost about 10 years ago. It has taken some time to really sort of come up with full force, and now there are some farmers who have the license to start cultivating and selling cannabis on their own lands. And now that it is legal, people are seeing, not legal, but now that there's controlled legalization, there's so much more attention now from industrialists all over the country who want to get into the action, who see the benefits of cannabis as a medicinal drug, who see the benefits of industrial cannabis in textiles, in concrete, well, they call it hempcrete, so building materials using hemp, which have been used in Indian history, and they're kind of trying to bring it back now. So it is a very interesting clash. In Himachal Pradesh, just about a year ago, they enacted almost the same law as it is in Uttarakhand for control cultivation. But the same month as this law was enacted, uh, hundreds of acres of farmers were arrested for having cannabis growing in their backyards. Again, because they could not get the license in time of those few weeks time that they were given. And again, in many cases, the cannabis that's being cultivated, it's not by their intention. It just so happens.
It grows wild.
It grows wild the way it does. There's a reason it's called a weed, which means that it doesn't need so much human interaction for it to exist. It just exists in nature. This is like a huge complication, and this is why I feel that even the controlled legalization of cannabis is taking some time in India, because there's a lot of confusion between different state governments, district governments, different authorities, between the police, between the excise departments, etc. There's just a lot of people in between. Between the farmer and the end product, there's just a lot of laws that have to be, a lot of hoops that have to be jumped right now.
And the process of getting these permits, as you outline, is a series of hoops, which frankly would be impossible for a small farmer who's doing this on the side, perhaps. One person in the crowd messaged me saying that their partner used to be a flower child of the 60s. And another person who's likely in the crowd was telling me yesterday about their use of CBD oil. And so I was thinking about the fact that actually many of us in the audience also are deeply familiar with this, if not through personal use, then at the very least through popular culture, because so much of our popular culture is about bhang. So there's a bunch of stuff that you talk about in the book. Since you're from Banaras, should we start with Kaike Pan Banaras Wala, which also has a line about bhang? Then there's this very evocative description of Dam Maro Dam and your first time listening to it or seeing the visuals of it. And then the third song that I wanted to bring up, I don't know if people in the crowd are familiar with it, but there's a Punjabi hip-hop artist called Prabdeep, and he has a song called Chitta, which is excellent visuals, and it is precisely about the problem that you outlined, which is that because brown sugar and marijuana are becoming deeply interlinked from a dealership perspective, and because these are not legalized things, so lots of young people are getting addicted to much more dangerous things like chitta. So, maybe if you could take this, Karan, as a journey through popular culture, touching upon these songs, plus other things you might want to bring up. I know certainly you talk about M. Cream, the film. You also talk about the Aryan Khan case and, all the Sushant Singh Rajput case. This is all popular culture that's part of your book. Do you want to maybe give us a portrait of contemporary India through that, please?
Yeah, so one of the chapters in my book is called Dam Maro Dam, because I feel that, at least for me, I was born around the same time that the NDPS Act was enacted, so more than a decade after the movie Hare Rama Hare Krishna and that song. But for me, I think that was the first visual of seeing people use marijuana in any way. In the music video, you have I think it's supposed to be Kathmandu. And it just looks like a very flower power coded hippie party before Devanand comes in and he's like really unhappy with all the young people having fun. But it was such a beautiful moment actually, to like, they all look so happy and they were having so much fun, and it really gave, in many ways, some people will say it gave a wrong message that this is not fun, and that's why they had to show. If you see the video out of context, it would seem like that the film is promoting marijuana, but actually it wasn't.
Nobody remembers that bit.
Nobody remembers that part. Yeah, but that said, that song to me really sort of, it continues to. Now we're more than 50 years later. The lyrics of that song, they continue to sort of speak to the existential crisis that almost every young person in this country who might try the substance goes through, because when they say दुनिया ने हमको दिया किया, दुनिया से हमने लिया किया, हम सबकी परवाह करे क्यों, सबने हमारा किया किया. It's this feeling of being alienated by the world. The world has given nothing to us. Why should we care for anyone else? Dam maro dam. Just take the puffs, say the names of the gods, and you're good. And it's very interesting to me that you can take two lanes from here. You can take the spiritual lane, because at the end of the day, they are saying Hare Krishna, Hare Ram in the song, which has been a part of Indian bhang usage for generations. I am from Varanasi, where bhang is, there are lots of government-approved bhang shops, and it's legal to go and buy bhang, say Bam Bhole, and do a goli or do a smoke out of a chillam whenever you want. So it is very complicated because the same country where this part of pop culture, and you mentioned some of the other songs, there have been songs since since the Marodam for the last 50 years. There have been songs in films where there'll always be a holy scene.
Even Balam Pichkari, Tune
Even
Hawa
Balam
mein
Pichkari.
bhang milaya and all. So there's always
Exactly.
reference to bhang.
There's almost every film, especially summer films, will have a holy scene where the actor and the actress will have some bhang and have a good time. And in the same country where this is happening, then all of a sudden, the biggest news stories became about the alleged cannabis use of Sushant Singh Rajput or Aryan Khan. And these became huge deals, and they really actually spoiled the lives of a bunch of people because the media really made a negative storyline around these things. So I did comment on these hypocrisies quite a bit in India, where if you come at it from a religious angle, it's almost seen okay, it's almost seen safe, it's seen as fun, it's seen as related to Holi and Shivratri. But if you come at it from, in Sushant Singh's case, he was using CBD for health and anxiety, and no one quite understood that. In Aryan Khan's case, he was just happened to be on that boat where there was some charas. So I think the hypocrisy is crazy, and that's what I wrote about quite a bit in the book.
One of the things that you've talked about is the use of CBD oil, that even Sushant Singh Rajput was likely using it, we don't know, allegedly for anxiety, and the huge benefits of it for palliative care.
Everything I've said today is allegedly, by the
Everything
way.
is alleged. Me too. Same caveat here. But so the use of it in palliative care, though, I know so many people now who do take CBD oil for pain management, to sleep better, for anxiety. And so you do see, I mean, in Delhi, you can buy it over the counter in some places. So I guess that paradox continues. But one of the other things, do you need something? The fan?
The fan, yeah, feeling very hot.
Mahika? One of the other things that I'd written down and I wanted to discuss is what is the way forward for India then? There is in the Netherlands, of course, there's a lot of coffee shop tourism, and there's also Gedug Beleid. I looked up how to say this, which is the general tolerance of cannabis. So they don't say we actively, in fact, they've really not enjoyed the fact that a lot of tourism in Amsterdam has been around cannabis use. So the locals aren't thrilled about that. But there's a general policy of tolerance, maybe akin to what we discussed in Manipur, which is you do you sort of thing. But what do you think the future, I mean, what's the ideal future for you, which would weave in all of these historical elements as well as contemporary elements? But for example, entrepreneurship and that possibility. What's an ideal like for you and the future of cannabis in India?
Good question.
Thank you.
For me personally, I feel that since this is a weed that grows naturally, and it's almost a gift of nature to a lot of local communities, especially in the mountain areas of India, I feel whatever solution India comes for cannabis, it remains strongly rooted to the farmer's interest, and ensures that the farmers who are cultivating this, who are living off the land of cannabis, are benefit of it first and foremost. One of the things that I'm worried about, that if it is fully legalized, industry will come in and sort of take away the land from the farmers, because there is a lot of potential to be made over cannabis in India. This is a $1 trillion industry around the world. In China, in Canada, in the US, all across Europe, a lot of money is being made off of legal cannabis. India is, despite the fact that we have the most cannabis in the world, we are not even like 0.1% of our potential, of where we could be compared to the rest of the world. So when it does happen, when the floodgates do open, I think this is going to be a very, very profitable sort of plant, very, very profitable venture to get into. It'll be a huge industry, but it's going to be. I feel kind of bittersweet about it because as a country we might start making profits off of cannabis, but I hope that profit doesn't come off the expense of the farmers who are actually been the most closely related, the most tactilely related with the plant. They are the ones who meshed the seed. They're the ones who planted. They're the ones who turned the raw cannabis into so many amounts of usable things. So whatever steps are taken, I hope it is decriminalization from that angle. And then the other part is that I hope that in Indian prisons, Indian jails are filled with small-time criminals, especially in Andhra, Orissa area. I remember when I was in Visakhapatnam, somebody told me that about 85% of the prisoners in central jail are locals, farmers, Adivasi people who have just been used as mules to basically commute the cannabis from the farm to the big dealers. The big dealers, the big mafia heads, whoever they often go scot-free. And it's usually the mules who end up getting arrested, the transporters who end up getting arrested. So I hope for that there'll be decriminalization in that sense, so that the focus is not on the middlemen, so to say, and the focus instead shifts on the bigger illegal mafias, the bigger illegal rings that are working behind. Yeah.
And are deeply exploitative and are making an enormous amount of money, none of which is funneled back to the producers of it. But if we do have time, one of the things that I wanted to ask is, as you mentioned, this is a very, very personal book. So it does, of course, touch upon all these aspects of the plant, of the industry around the plant, of the religious, mythological significance. Also, you need to talk about the Samudra Manthan. That's another question. But it's also so much about you and your travels. And at one point, you say that this whole book might just be an elaborate midlife crisis, because it was a sense of traveling, to discover what the journey and history of this plant has been, but also in many ways a journey to discover yourself and to see how you react in new contexts and things like that. And part of what I'm wondering is that the notion of identity is so fraught. I mean, technically you're from Banaras, but you identify deeply with the hills. And I think one of the most evocative passages in the book is about this simultaneous love and guilt that you feel towards Uttarakhand, which I fully identify with, because one feels Uttarakhandi, but one is not by blood Uttarakhandi. And so that aspect of always sort of being an outsider, always discovering India, partly also as a consequence of your relative privilege. So if you'd want to touch upon any aspect of this, the personal journey of it all.
Yeah. So a lot of it has been related to my search for a home, so to say. My family is from Varanasi, but I didn't quite grow up there. I grew up in Mussoorie for most of my life, for most of my childhood, and then even as an adult, I've lived in Mussoorie quite a bit. So for me, and then I've lived in Delhi, I've lived abroad. So for me, the idea of home has shifted every few years almost. I don't quite, when people ask me where I'm from, I might say home is Banaras because that's where my family is, but I'm probably from Mussoorie because that's where I've spent most of my time. So what ended up happening in the course of writing this book is that I didn't want it to be a cannabis book, and I know this sounds quite crazy to say, but literally the subtitle of the book is an exploration of cannabis in India. I wanted it to be a book that is seeking this idea of bliss or Ananda, which is the main title of the book. And in what gives one bliss? Cannabis is one of the things that gives a temporary sort of facsimile of bliss. It gives this facade of bliss that might feel like, oh, okay, for these next few hours, all the problems in my life are solved because I'm stoned. I try to look for other things that might give a more permanent sense of that bliss. For example, travel was one of the great sort of allegories I use in this book. Travel as cannabis, and what I mean by that is, just the newness that I feel being in places that I've never been to before. I was in parts of Kerala that I've never been before. I don't speak the language. Culturally, it's very different. The food is very different, and it was really, really exciting. This is how anyone feels when they go on a holiday. There is a high in being a stranger sometimes. There's a high in feeling something for the first time. It's a high and a joy, not completely different from the high and the joy that one gets from using a substance like cannabis.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. So, in so for me, that was the personal side of the story. The personal side of the story was, I felt that I had lost curiosity as I grew up. A lot of this book is also about me observing my daughter grow up, and just being so happy by the fact that everything made her interested and happy. She was just the color of the flowers interested her, the way things work interest her, why it rains and why it doesn't rain. That's very interesting to her. And this is sort of a curiosity that we as grown-ups take for granted, and we take the beauty in the world for granted, I think. So in a way, the book became about that. The book became about regaining that curiosity. Cannabis might give people a temporary sort of relief from the real world, so to say, but it's not a full-time answer to regaining that curiosity. I felt that I had to find it for myself.
You're absolutely right, and that's such a lovely answer. And then one final thing before we open it up to audience questions is that you talk about your daughter as the next generation and her curiosity, but also one of the other lovely things about the book, and I must say there are so many wonderful things about it, and I hope everybody will read it, but one of the things you talk about is your family's history, through the partition and this and that. And again, there's this a lot that you spend on your grandfather and his name, which was Ishrat, the name that he gave to himself. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as well? So we've already touched upon your daughter as the next generation, but would you like to maybe have a little bit about how you were shaped by the generations before you?
Yeah, it was kind of a very beautiful sort of serendipitous thing that happened. I call my book Ananda because anandamide is a compound that is found within our bodies that gives us that feeling of bliss. It's the English word for the compound, but they actually chose the Sanskrit word Ananda in the English name Anandamide, because it's for example, if you go for a long run, or if you have any kind of if you have a meal that you enjoy a lot, anytime your body is just happy. If you travel to a new place, anytime your body doesn't need an outside substance to feel that shot of bliss, that is anandamide doing the work for you. The way cannabis works is that the THC compound in cannabis has the exact same compound structure as anandamide. So the THC in cannabis fools our body into thinking that this is anandamide giving us the bliss. It's not an outside substance. So that's why I named the book Ananda. Then I remembered, so my grandfather was, my grandfather's name was Amritlal Madhok, but he was also a poet. He was a shair, and the name that he gave himself as a shair was the Urdu word Ishrat, and Ishrat in Urdu also means bliss. It also means joy, and he basically decided that he's gonna, through his poetry, through his art, he's going to choose. He's gonna chase joy. He's gonna go after the feeling of feeling blissful. And that was just incredible for me to see that inadvertently, without quite realizing about it, I was doing the same thing through my art. So I think that was a nice kind of tie-in in my family history.
Ittifaq mein barkat hai, as they say. We will open it up for audience questions if anybody would like to ask. Okay. Can we have mics there, please, with Miss Ira in the front row first?
A very beautifully done session. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to every word, every input, and your questions were fantastic. Your answers were brilliant. And there was this whole thing happening about allegedly. So I'll also speak in the third person. I do know that you did speak of Ananda, and that was, I felt, a lot in the focus. And then there is Ananda we derive from food and so many other things. And if you were to abuse anything, for that matter, even food, so it is abusing it and it has benefits done the right way. Likewise for marijuana, I was wondering, something that, there are allegedly friends, people I know, poets, readers, who do it just this much, and it's like you sleep with a question, a thought you're dealing with, you're mulling over it, and after having done it, you have this eureka moment and you have the answer. So I'm wondering, would you like to elaborate on that? I felt that wasn't touched upon.
So, thank you for the question. I have been asked a version of this question about so many times while talking about this book in different platforms, because I think almost everyone has this kind of an idea that, it helps with creativity. What I have found through, people in my network who have used it for creative reasons and non-creative reasons, I think if the creativity is within you, it's going to enhance it. But if it's not within you, it's an excuse. And I feel that about almost any given thing. If somebody, a lot of people have tied the use of cannabis to getting what is called the munchies, which is mean eating a whole lot. You get high and then you don't stop eating. It doesn't mean that it's not that the plant is making you hungrier. It's just giving you an option that is in front of you and making you chase it. If there's no option in front of you, if you're distracted by something else, if you're distracted by a film, if you're distracted by your own reading and writing, you're probably not going to eat so much. So I think, coming back to your question, what I've noticed is, I think it's kind of just an excuse that people use that it's going to make them more creative. If it's not within them already, this is not going to unlock something different for you. It might just help you focus on your present moment a lot more. And focusing on the present, I have felt, almost always leads to good things.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a wonderful session. I just want to say that, just to expand a bit on Ira has to say, about excess. Anything in excess is bad. And in my personal experience, because I'm one of the children of the 60s, I prefer heavy smokers to heavy drinkers. That's for sure. That's my experience. And that's it. Thank you for a beautiful session.
You're absolutely right, and I have written about the dangers of excess in anything, the dangers of excess in sugar, in shopping, in alcohol, in anything like that. It can all lead to a bad. So I think moderation is very important in anything we do, in a legal form of a thing or an illegal form of a thing. If someone sleeps too much, that's not great either. So. And you're absolutely right. I think there's I think people who have been heavy stoners have not really posed a risk to the rest of the world as much as heavy drinkers might. But that's my personal opinion.
And in fact, you also talk about how the government is really pushing for liquor sales in airports, all of that, but not pushing for cannabis in the same way that yoga. I mean, lots of things there. But General Pannu, I think you wanted to ask a question.
Hello. Okay. With the experience of insurgency, I find that a lot of militants who come across from the borders, they're stoned. And you have to keep fighting them, but they exist, they go underground, they operate in very, very difficult areas. And when you kill them or you capture them and you find they have got a satchel full of stuff which you can't relate to. And then you realize that they are not drinking. There is a higher purpose, which of course is indoctrination, but there is a inner substance which connects them to the higher purpose and gives them a focus of the mission. Do you think this kind of practice can be brought to a more realm of battlefield, where the soldiers who are actually doing a very tough job, facing death, uncertainty, And we were talking about all that, with spirituality yesterday. We were talking about covers a lot of it. I have not experienced what you have written, but then do you think it can be put to good combat survivability use?
Wow. Yeah, that's it. I have not thought about that at all. But I have written in the book about stories from Indian history where, for example, I think there was a story I mentioned of Guru Gobind Singh's army, where there was a soldier that allegedly took some cannabis and some opium, and I think he killed an elephant that was from the opposing army. So that was just an example in the book, but I don't quite know how much it will help because I think it makes most people quite lazy and docile. It might help focus on certain things, but it also, so I think it's a person to person issue. It might help, and this is being done abroad. It is helping people who are suffering from some kind of PTSD, some kind of post-traumatic stress after combat, after violence. It has helped people with anxiety and stress after suffering. So that part I do know about, but to actually use it, actually be weaponized as a positive thing in battle, I'm not quite sure what the science is going to be about that.
There's two more. Mahika, can we take two more questions, please? There's one there and one there. And there's at the back. इसका mic on कर देंगे, please.
If I may, I would like to answer the question about the use in battle. In the Muslim world, they actually had a sect of assassins. And they were incredible warriors, like the mythical ninja of Japan. And they were using hashish, derived from marijuana. And between training and mental training, not just physical, and the use of hashish, they were becoming incredible warriors with totally fearless. And also it's true in the United States, marijuana is used to treat PSD, and it's used also for cancer patients because of the munchies. Usually it settles the stomach, the nausea from chemo, and so the patient has a better chance of survival.
Which also
Thank
Karan
you.
talks about in the book. There's a section on cancer. Sorry, can we take one last question there, please? And Priyanka, we'll meet you after the session, so we'll postpone yours. But over here, please.
Hi. If you've answered, I haven't read your book. Yeah, and if you've answered the question in your book, then just ignore it and we'll move on. Yeah. We have this tradition, yeah, a spiritual tradition that's connected with bhang. Yeah. At the same time, we have an entire caste which is, how else to put it, called bhangis. Yeah, and this is probably a most lowest, most downtrodden caste. How do you see this connection? And if you've already discussed it, we can move on. If you haven't, I would like to have some clarity on it.
So this issue has come up before. Actually, I'm not sure about the etymology of the words, but the phrase bhangis is actually not related to the phrase bhang. They came from two different traditions, and somehow this confusion grew. I think the use of bhang has been used spiritually by almost every caste of, especially Shaivites and Vaishnavites. And it's not directly related to the word bhangis or the caste bhangis.
Thank you so much. We don't have time for, we have to close. But we'll circle back to Priyanka later. Right in the end, I want to say that I've discovered through reading the book, I think a few of the things that make you happy: travel, literature, reading and writing, mostly fiction. Karan also has some wonderful fiction, which I think Natraj will have, so you can track that down, get him to sign a copy if you like. And also work that your friends enjoy. That's a line that you've written that I don't know if you remember, but you wrote it. And I think that's a real testament to good writing and a real testament to your book. So that's my last comment, but the last comment I'd like you to make, ambitious, but if you can loop in Samudra Manthan and maybe one of your grandfather's shares and whatever else you'd like to say.
I don't remember the shares off the top of my head, so I don't want to misrepresent him. But the Samudra Manthan, this is a big story. I don't think we have time for me to tell the whole story. But I think a lot of people know about I'm sure people are familiar with the Samudra Manthan story, right? And basically the sort of how we say in Banaras, the mota version of the story is that there's this Amrit, which is the exiliar of immortality. The gods are fighting about it. They're fighting for it, and Garuda, the eagle god, takes the Amrit and he flies around the country, and wherever the four drops fall, including Haridwar, becomes an auspicious place, and it is thus related to our celebrations of these become some of the most auspicious places on earth, wherever the Amrit allegedly fell. But in mining for this Amrit, the gods also released a poison called halahal into the world, and it's the most dangerous poison there was, much more dangerous than the PM 2.5 in Delhi right now. And the only way it could be stopped was if Shiva just inhales it all. He took all the halahal in the atmosphere and took it within himself, and his throat turned blue. This is why he was called Nilkant. And to relieve himself of the pain of this, he took some bhang. And this is how Shiva became associated with bhang, and this is how Shaivites became associated with bhang. This is one of the reasons. There are many other stories about how he became associated with bhang. This is one of the main ones. So this is how one of the great stories in Indian mythology is directly related to cannabis use, and this is how far cannabis goes in Indian history and Indian mythology.
Closing comments? No share? You want to approximate what one of the shares might have said in your pursuit to the long road to Ananda?
No shares. Just read my book. There's a lot of poetry in the book.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Karan.